Susan, exclaimed a shocked Janet, aren't you going to ask Tim? Do you think he won't care? Won't he be upset? You'll be the only married woman in the group. You know Carol and Peggy, they'll be in bed with some guys 6 hours before the plane lands in Vegas. Ask, like he'll say no? Tim never says no. Jen, fuck him, I'm tired of Mr. C. Nice Guy, Susan snapped. Her face dropped and she softened a little. It's not like I'm going to cheat on him. I just want to relax for a while. I'm bored to death. There's no adventure in my life. Janet Simpson, Susan's longtime friend, just shook her head. Okay, Sue, it'll be fun, just be careful. I wouldn't want you to ruin your marriage. Marriage, laughed Susan Burns. What Tim and I have is not a burning passion. Susan, Jen, we've been together for over 22 years and I've never seen him truly passionate. Living with him is like living with Mr. C. White bread. Damn, Sue, what's wrong with you? I thought you really loved him. Why are you so bitter? I don't understand you. Tim is the sweetest, kindest person I've ever met. If you're more than him if you don't want it, I'll take him without a second thought. And I know several hundred other girls who think the same, Janet exclaimed. Susan Burns sighed heavily. I know. I love him, but I'm tired of living with Mr. C. Perfect. He never loses his temper. He doesn't get too upset. He walks away from any conflict. Hell, he doesn't even fight with me. Even when he disagrees with me, he is so gentle towards me and gives in to me so easily. And that's bad, Jan asked in surprise. Are you upset that he treats you well? Are you crazy? Sue just shook her head. You don't understand, January. He lets people step on him. He doesn't protect himself. You remember the New Year's party. Walter Lee was drunk as crazy and was trying to provoke Tim. He almost called Tim a coward. Tim just left him, January. He should have nailed Walt, but he didn't. He simply turned and left. Jan, I was wondering if Tim really was a coward, Sue said softly. Jan could see that her friend was really upset now. Unshed tears sparkled in her eyes. Janet took Susan's hands and tried to comfort her. Sue, everything will be fine. Why don't you talk to him? Try to get him to be more decisive. Sue caught her breath and pulled herself together. I've already tried 1,000 times. He always tells me that violence never solves problems. Sometimes I get so angry with him. I don't know what to do. That's why I want to leave for a while. I really need it, January. Sue smiled bravely at Janet. Besides, you know what they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas or something like that. Janet smiled back at Sue, but she felt cold and worried about her friend. Tim Burns was a really nice guy. Just over 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighing about 160 pounds, he was slim and fit. Morning runs and workouts allowed him to stay in shape. After graduating from high school, Tim immediately entered the U.S. Navy since he did not have money for college and service was one of the ways to get an education. 4 years later, his dream came true and he was accepted into the university to study finance and accounting. He was older than his classmates and took his studies very seriously, not throwing parties or parties. He was going to make the most of this opportunity. Leaving his years in the Navy behind, Tim focused on getting the best grades possible. At the beginning of his 3rd year, Tim met Susan Sims. A friend introduced her to him in the student cafeteria. The three of them had lunch together and Tim felt comfortable and intrigued around her. She was apparently 5 feet 6 inches tall and had a figure that was very pleasing to the eye. She had short dark hair and blue eyes that sparkled when she was excited about something. She gave Tim her phone number and he actually called her. At first, they dated lightly. They both seemed to be cautious, but they soon became a couple. One evening, after dinner and on the way back to the dorm, Tim parked his car in a local park and turned off the engine. Turning to her, Tim began hesitantly, Sue, listen, I want to talk to you. Just talk, Tim, she answered with a question in her eyes. Yeah, look, we've been dating for a few months now and I need to tell you how I feel. Sue just sat there and waited, a twinkle in her eye.
Ah, it's not easy, damn it, Tim muttered, unsure of himself.
Sue, I love you and I want to marry you, he chanted as he blushed. Tim, how do you know?
Sue said quietly. We've never done anything other than kiss and hold hands.
How do you know you love me?
Tim looked at her with some surprise on his face.
I respect you, Sue. I would never try to take advantage of you.
Why should I treat you like a frivolous girl? He answered. Frivolous, she exclaimed.
What makes you think that intimacy between two people who care about each other makes a woman frivolous? Tim, I'm not sure you love me.
I think you want a girl who's like Mother Teresa, not the one who has blood in her veins.
Sue sat back in her seat with a look of disappointment on her face. Tim raised his hands in self-defense. Wait, Sue, wait, he retorted. That's not true. It's just that I was in the Navy for 4 years and the girls we encountered weren't your typical coeds. I just wanted to make sure I treated you the way you deserved. He thought for a moment and spoke again in a low voice. I really love you, Susan Sims. I want you to be my wife. I want to be with you for the rest of my life.
Sue began to cry and reached out to him.
Oh, Tim, I love you too.
You are the sweetest, most thoughtful, most compassionate person I have ever met.
Yes, I will marry you.
It was a quick ride, Tim. From just kissing to having sex in the back of the car, Sue laughed.
When you start, you don't waste time. I've wanted to do this for a long time, Sue.
A very long time, after which they kissed. Sue graduated from university with a degree in marketing and managed to get a job with a cosmetics company in the region.
She would have to undergo a training period of several months before she would be given her own territory.
She was surprised by the salary.
It was quite generous. Tim still had a year left before graduating from university, but they didn't want to wait and soon got married.
They managed to rent a small apartment near the university. Sue worked and Tim studied, and it worked out well. After graduating from university, Tim was also able to find work in the area as a junior accountant, and with 2 salaries, they had few financial worries. When Susan became pregnant a year later, they decided that she would take maternity leave and then return to work after providing adequate childcare. In fact, Susan decided and Tim agreed. She gave birth to a daughter whom they both adored, especially given the complications during childbirth. Sue could not have any more children. They were disheartened but grateful for their daughter, Amanda.
Both continued to be successful in their respective professions and money was never an issue.
With their combined income, they were eventually able to buy a large home in a gated community with a golf course and country club. When Amanda turned 12, Susan decided to stop working and become a full-time mother. Tim quickly agreed. Tim was also promoted well, and after more than 20 years with the company, he was promoted to the position of senior account manager with a very comfortable salary. Then, a few weeks ago, a vacancy for vice president came up and Tim applied for it.
He was quite confident since he knew that he was quite capable of taking on this position.
A few days later, John Cook, the CEO, called Tim into his office.
Tim, nice to see you. Please have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Coffee, he asked. No, thanks, John.
I'm fine, Tim replied, watching him carefully. He felt that this would not be very good news.
Tim, let's be straight with you. I know you applied for the vice president position. I have to be straight with you.
You won't get it, even though you're smart and capable. Tim swallowed his disappointment.
Okay, John, go ahead, be honest. Tell me why. Cook smiled softly. Tim, the fact is that you are too good a person. I don't think anyone in this organization has ever worked with someone like you. You are extremely knowledgeable, considerate, very easy to work with and kind to everyone who you're dating. That's one of the reasons we want you to stay in your current position. Tim insisted. What's the other reason? John, I think I deserve to know what it is. Cook nodded. Yes, you deserve it. He leaned forward and looked closely at Tim. That's the problem. Tim, you're too sweet. You don't have that fierceness. You don't know when to strike. If there's one area you don't shine in, it's negotiation. Let's not kid ourselves, you know. That I'm right. Tim nodded in response. He knew Cook was right. It's not that he didn't have the so-called ability. He just chose not to go that route. He didn't want to grab anyone by the throat. He had already had enough of this. He stood up, shook Cook's hand and left. He had to tell Susan that he didn't get the position. She wouldn't be surprised. She knew Tim. Tim sat at his desk, looking out the window thoughtfully. For the first time in years, he thought about the character he decided to become after leaving the Navy. He consciously decided to become the person he was. He decided to renounce violence in any form, physical or verbal, even trying to eliminate any manifestations of aggression in his new personality. It really wasn't that difficult. Tim was essentially a very good person, but he had a dark side. He wanted to make sure that this dark side never showed again. But now he began to doubt how far he had taken this character. His thoughts went back to his years in the Navy, training in the dark on the cold, wet beaches of Coronado and underwater off San Clemente, a place where no one could hear you scream. He remembered scouting an enemy beach from the surf, attacking a moving ship at sea, hiding in ambush for hours or days in the mud and stench of the swamp. He was trained well. He was a Navy SEAL for over 3.5 years. For more than 3.5 years, he was a killing machine. He knew he was on the verge of a breakdown and thanked his lucky stars when his service ended. He vowed that he would never allow that side of himself to show again. But now he wondered if he had gone too far. He is no longer sure whether he completely agreed with John Cook. He did not exhibit the steel in his spine that was required for the position of vice president only because he chose not to embrace that trait. He knew that he had reached the last rung of the career ladder in this company. He will always remain in the same position, but perhaps cracks have appeared in this image. He wasn't looking forward to telling Sue about his conversation with Cook. He knew that the last few years of their marriage had not been particularly happy. Sue often seemed abrupt and irritable. She was used to criticizing him and at times seemed to almost despise him. He knew that he often had to control his anger and move away from potential conflict. They seemed to grow apart. Tim's thoughts went back to the New Year's party where he almost lost control. "Hey, Timmy," hummed a half-drunk Walt Hurley. "How do you do around the little people?" Hurley laughed from his 6'2" height. Tim stood completely still and just looked at Hurley while Sue just stood there and looked at Tim. "Okay, Timmy," Hurley continued condescendingly. "We know little people don't like to get hurt." He then laughed loudly as Tim turned and walked away. The scene at home later that night was not pleasant. Sue couldn't wait to run into him. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she hissed. "How can you let that idiot make you look like a fool? He made you look like some kind of coward. Why didn't you defend yourself?" "What would you like me to do, Sue?" Tim asked tiredly. "Would it have been better if I had physically attacked him? Would a witty comeback have been more appropriate? He was drunk and I didn't want to make a scene." "Leave it." Sue looked at him with contempt and said sharply, "Is it better that you look like a coward? Sometimes I wonder about you." Then she turned and left the room. They both slept poorly that night. Tim returned to the present. Not just that night. Something was going wrong in their marriage. Sue seemed almost indifferent to him most of the time. He also noticed that they hadn't made love in months. She didn't seem interested and her attitude put him off. Who would want to make love to a woman who is not interested? Tim realized he was approaching a crossroads in his life, but he was confused and worried. The facade he had so carefully built over the years now seemed to be cracked and he didn't know what to do. He shook his head and put his worries aside for the moment. Later that evening, after dinner, Tim told Sue about his conversation with John Cook. She waved her hand indifferently and told him sharply that she was not surprised. Sue then told him that she and the girls were going to Vegas for a long weekend. She then turned her attention back to some corny TV show she was watching. Tim sat and looked at her. Which girls? He asked. Isn't this something you should have talked to me about before you committed? Sue looked at him impatiently. Listen, Tim, it's Jan, Carol, Peggy and I, we're going to have fun for a couple of days. It's not a big deal, so don't pester me. Tim continued to insist. Aren't they all married? Do you think your little trip is in order? Sue stood up and turned off the TV. Then she turned sharply to him. Yes, she answered sharply. I think it's totally appropriate, so just shut up. I'm a grown girl and I'll do what I want. With these words, she turned and went into the bedroom. Tim sighed heavily. Things were getting out of control, but he wasn't quite sure how to deal with it. He felt that the situation would get worse before it got better, if at all. Later that week, Tim returned home from work to find Sue in the kitchen. She shouted that dinner was almost ready and asked him to wash and change clothes. He walked into their bedroom and quickly took off his suit, washed his hands and face, and then put on a pair of casual pants. He noticed Sue's suitcase on the bed and remembered that she was going to Vegas with her friends for the weekend. He didn't know why, but he unfastened the clasps on the bag and looked inside. In the front pocket, he saw packed underwear. They still had Victoria's Secret tags on them. He saw small thongs and lace bras, things she hadn't bought or worn in a long time. He slowly closed and zipped the bag. Tim did not yet realize that the cracks in his personality were becoming wider. Tim, Sue shouted, dinner is ready. When you come down, bring my bag. Janet will pick me up in the morning. Our flight is at 10:25. Tim did as he was told, placing his suitcase by the front door. At the dinner table, he broke the silence. You didn't tell me where you were staying, Sue. Sue looked up, stunned, as if she hadn't expected him to ask. We'll be in Rio, but don't call there. We'll be hanging out most of the time. If you need to contact me, just call my cell phone. I'll be in touch. Tim nodded. He knew what he needed to do. Tim woke up early Friday morning and quietly got ready for work so as not to wake Sue. He arrived at the office long before everyone else and settled down at his desk. Okay, he said to himself as he picked up the phone. Enough messing around. Time to start making business calls. Venetian, how can I direct your call? A female voice answered. Ron Harkham, please. I'm not sure if the boss is already there. Would you like to leave a message? Try calling him anyway. Tim insisted. The phone was picked up after one ring. Harkham answered a deep voice. Hey, Ron, it's Tim Burns, Tim said softly into the phone. There was a short pause. Tim, it's been quite a few years. How are you doing? I need a favor. Ron and Tim began to explain everyone what he needs. I don't care what kind of hotel, she told you. Tim, we'll find them and keep you posted. They can't even pee without telling us. I'll contact you from time to time. Harkham paused. I'm sorry, Tim. You deserve better. And remember, whatever you need, just call me. Seals never forget. Tim thanked him and hung up. Ron Harkham was the head of security at the Venetian and was on friendly terms with the security heads of other hotels in the city. Tim had no doubt that Ron could deliver on his promise. He put the issue aside for now. Tim spent a lot of time last week thinking about the course of action he was planning. He weighed the downsides against the potential for success. He made extensive notes and tables. He saw a few flaws. He was more than confident and decided to move forward. He grabbed the phone again and dialed an international number. Corallo, Simon, answered a female voice. Sam Corallo, please, Tim responded. I will transfer you to his personal assistant. Please wait. Office of Mr. Corallo, another female voice answered. Mr. Corallo, please, tell him it's Tim Burns. Sorry, Mr. Corallo is not currently accepting calls. Can you tell me what this is about? Honey, Tim replied softly. If Sam isn't on this line in 2 minutes, your job might just disappear. Just tell him Tim Burns wants him and do it now.
After a pause, he heard the phone being placed on a hard surface.
Tim didn't have to wait long. "Tim, you're a pest," boomed a hoarse voice. "I should be mad as hell at you. You promised to keep in touch and it's been, what, almost 8 years since I've seen you? I should be mad. How are you doing? Tell me what's going on with you."
"Hey, Sam, calm down.
I've climbed the corporate ladder. I just never climbed as high as you then again. Donald Trump never climbed as high as you," Tim joked. "Tim, it's really good to hear from you. It's been too long. I mean it. We should keep in touch. All the guys should."
We were a band of brothers.
Tim heard the emotion in Sam's voice and it choked him up a little. "You're right, Sam. I think we should take steps to organize this. But first I need a favor. It's money, Sam. I need money." "Damn, is that all?"
"Tell me how much and where to send it," Sam exclaimed into the phone. "I don't know how much yet," and Tim outlined his plans to Sam Corallo. "Okay, Tim, I'll set up a line of credit for a couple million at my bank.
Just draw on it as needed. If it runs out, I'll add a couple million more. Sam, we also need to discuss things like the interest rate and repayment schedule." Tim insisted. There was a pause and then Sam exploded. "You fool, insulting me? Me? You stupid idiot. If you were here, I would break your neck. Well, maybe not me, but I would make one of my guards try." He laughed. Tim laughed. "Okay, Sam, calm down. We'll discuss this later. I'm sure I'll see you in person within the next couple of months. I'm serious, Tim. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. I owe you everything. I told you a long time ago. Whatever you need, you must call Sam."
"Please, Tim, remember that," Sam pleaded.
"Thanks, Sam. I remember," Tim answered softly.
They quickly finished discussing the details and ended the conversation with promises to meet soon. Tim looked at his watch and realized that most of the morning had passed. He pressed the intercom and asked Pam, his secretary, to come into his office.
"Hi, Pam, please have a seat,"
Tim said, looking at her carefully. Pam was an attractive woman in her 40s, a divorced mother of 2. She had worked for Tim for over 6 years and he greatly appreciated her abilities.
"Pam, do you remember the first time I interviewed you for this job?" Pam nodded and replied, "You considered Mara trained because I had a master's degree in business management from Wharton Schools.
I told you that I was looking for a position that would allow me to spend time with my growing children and that money was not my main goal.
My ex provided a good amount of child support." Tim replied, "I have a proposal for you. Please relax and let me explain everything." Sue and Janet enjoyed brunch the next morning in the hotel cafe.
Both looked a little rumpled and had red eyes.
"Damn, Jan, I really got drunk last night. I drank too much and I feel terrible right now," Sue muttered. She then laughed. "You know, I think it did me good. Maybe I'll do it again tonight."
"We both got drunk last night, Sue," JM giggled.
"We were lucky that the guys we danced with didn't insist. They could have come with us." Sue smiled at her. "Maybe it wouldn't be so terrible, friend. Remember, what happens here stays here."
Jan smiled back but was worried about her friend.
She just knew Sue had gone too far. She was afraid for her. "Don't get carried away, Sue. Remember Tim?"
"Yeah, Tim," Sue muttered uninterestedly.
"We probably won't see Carol or Peggy until flight time tomorrow, and I bet they'll be walking funny."
"I told you that they would quickly find company," Jan replied.
"That's why they come here from time to time. They'll be fine.
They're with 2 decent guys, I checked."
Sue smiled.
"You're like a mother hen, January, you're a good friend."
Later that night, Jan walked into the lounge and found Sue waiting for her. "Sue," Jan began,
"I hope you won't be too mad at me, but I met someone today and he asked me to dinner.
I'm meeting him in the cafeteria in a few minutes."
"That's great, Jan.
Damn, that's great, Sue responded enthusiastically. I'm really happy for you. Honey, don't worry about me. I'll grab a bite to eat, have a couple of cocktails and go to bed. Have a good time. Jan, I mean it. Jan smiled. I have a few minutes, so I'll have a drink with you.
I don't want him to think I'm too impatient. Suddenly, a man's voice sounded loudly above them.
Well, look at this. Two beautiful women sitting alone. This is a crime.
The girls looked up, scared.
Sue responded. What the hell are you doing here? Walt? Where else would I be, Susie? I'm a liquor salesman. I come to Vegas one weekend a month.
This way I can serve everyone here in one go, and that leaves me with weekdays to work with the local dealers.
But what are you girls, are you doing here? Asked Walt hurriedly. Just a weekend away, Walt, Janet answered this time. She bit her lip, immediately regretting giving him that information. Alone? I'm surprised, Susie. Tim let you go to Vegas alone.
I always thought he was a coward, but I didn't think he was that stupid, Hurley laughed.
Sue's lips pursed, and she answered him sharply. Watch your language, Walt. I don't like it when you talk about Tim like that.
Hurley immediately apologized.
Damn, I'm sorry, Sue. Sometimes I'm too stupid for my own good.
I'm really sorry, and I'll apologize to Tim when we get back.
You're good people.
Sue smiled, pleased with Hurley's reaction to her anger.
Maybe he wasn't as much of an asshole as she thought. Either way, he was definitely attractive. Janet hesitated and looked at her watch.
Sue noticed her concern and quickly reassured her.
You better go, Jan. Go have fun, I'll be fine. Go. Jan stood up and said, I'll see you in our room later, Sue, okay?
Of course, don't worry.
Good luck, Sue smiled.
They watched as Jan quickly crossed the lounge and entered the large hall.
Hurley turned to Sue. Sue, please believe me, I'm really sorry, okay?
Sue shook her head and smiled.
Okay, Walt, but no more jokes, okay? Absolutely, I'll try to be on my best behavior. Now please accept my invitation to dinner. I don't like eating alone and I'm sure you don't either. There's a great little Chinese restaurant in the hotel and I'd be over the moon if I wish you could keep me company.
Sue hesitated for a moment and then shrugged.
Okay, Walt, remember your promise to behave. Sue was pleasantly surprised by how much she enjoyed Walt's company. He was attentive, complimented her and made her laugh. She found that dinner was over too quickly.
Walt leaned across the table and took her hand.
Sue, it's too early to call it a night. Let's not do that now. How about we come back to the lounge for a couple drinks and I'll show you what a great dancer I am, Broadway material, he joked. Sue laughed and nodded. This evening was fun.
Walt really was a funny guy and she felt strangely attracted to him.
The next couple of hours passed pleasantly and Sue drank a lot more than usual.
She felt herself getting drunk and knew she should stop drinking anymore, but she was having fun and Walt was a great dancer.
Sue, Walt whispered, let's go up to my room. It's quieter and you can have some privacy. He then led her out of the lounge and towards the elevators. Sue walked staggering down the corridor, leaning on Walt. Oh, Sue, you seem a little drunk. You're a real party girl, he grinned slyly. Sue laughed again and held onto him as he opened the door to his room.
They both staggered around the room before catching their balance.
They made love.
Sue mumbled something about needing to go to the toilet and jumped off the bed, heading towards the bathroom. She didn't see Walt put his hands behind his head and smile, whispering, "Stupid bitch. Now I can have her whenever I want." Sue sat on the toilet, now in shock and dazed, the effects of the alcohol overshadowed by the enormity of what had happened.
She never imagined it would go this far and was terrified that Tim might find out about her infidelity.
She knew that she loved her husband and could not understand why she gave in so easily.
"Walt, I need to leave." "Just be quiet and don't argue," she told him as she walked back into the room. Walt just smiled and nodded. He watched as she quickly got dressed and rushed across the room to the door. Then he threw his head back and neighed loudly. Tim finished packing a hasty dinner on Saturday night and settled into the den with a newspaper he had no intention of reading. He realized that Sue had not called him. He hasn't seen or heard from her since she left on Friday morning. He had already called the Rio and there was no one listed there with that name, nor the names of the other 3 women. Tim wasn't surprised. He was not surprised by the feeling of emptiness that overwhelmed him. Tim felt a sickening, empty sensation that was completely foreign to him. Without a shred of proof, he knew that his marriage had truly reached a crisis. Deep down, in the deepest corners of his soul, he felt that his marriage was over and this realization was killing him. He loved Susan, but not the same Susan of recent years, not the indifferent, protective woman she had become. She had lost all respect for him and he knew that when she returned, his life would change. If she really cheated on him, was unfaithful, then not only will the marriage die, but a part of him will also die. The doorbell interrupted his thoughts. Tim picked up the phone. "Tim, this is Ron."
"Hey, Ron," Tim replied, his heart sinking.
He knew what he was about to hear. "I don't have good news."
"Your suspicions have been confirmed. She has contacted a well-known player here, a liquor salesman named Walt Hurley.
I have a full report, as well as photographs. Just tell me what you want to do." "Tim," finished Ron. Tim couldn't answer. Too many emotions were raging within him.
He felt himself being washed over with heat and cold. The confirmation of Susan's infidelity, although expected, and the fact that the other man was Hurley were revelations that took his breath away.
"Tim, I'm really sorry," Ron continued. "I can only imagine how you feel. Look, I'll keep all this information in my safe. Just call and tell me what you've decided. Don't try to talk now. I'll call you back. Tim, please don't do anything stupid. Pour yourself a drink and clear your thoughts. Promise me, buddy."
"Thanks, Ron," Tim finally managed to say.
"I appreciate your help. And no, I won't do anything stupid. I promise. Just keep everything safe and I'll get back to you. Thanks again, Ron."
Tim sat there, seemingly in a daze. He began to tremble and had to grab the arms of the chair tightly. Tears silently flowed down his cheeks and he felt destruction and sadness penetrating to the very core of his being.
He loved her. Why did she betray him so cruelly? Didn't she see how much she meant to him?
Tim suddenly felt a wave of nausea and barely made it to the bathroom where he vomited his dinner. He rinsed his face and rinsed his mouth. His thoughts became gloomy and he saw only a bleak future ahead of him. Then anger took over and he found an object for his icy wrath.
Hurley will pay.
Tim fiddled with it in his mind.
Hurley will never be able to cheat on anyone's wife again.
Hurley will die and die slowly at Tim's hands. Then suddenly the shock of what he was thinking made Tim wince. He realized what was happening to him.
Susan's betrayal turned him into a killer which he suppressed for many years.
He pulled himself together.
No, he will never return to the person he was. He had put it behind him and to give in now would be to betray everything he believed in.
He reminded himself that Hurley had to pay but also recognized that it wasn't just Hurley's fault.
Susan shared it equally.
Now he had to make decisions about the present. He had to accept that his marriage was effectively over. It was already difficult enough for him to accept Susan in recent years.
Her infidelity now made any pretense of a loving marriage a travesty.
He also wondered, bitterly, if this was the only time she had left. He pushed those thoughts aside and began to focus on the next few hours. The thought of going up to the bedroom he shared with Sue, made him shudder.
He would never sleep in that bed again.
He packed as many of his clothes and toiletries as he could, placed suitcases and boxes in his car, and then booked a hotel room in the city. He would look for his own place as soon as possible, but first wanted to be home when Sue returned. He wanted to meet her face to face.
Susan and Janet shared the plane ride home in relative silence. Janet exploded when she learned of Susan's blunder and they had a violent fight.
Janet finally turned to Sue as the plane began its descent to land and gently took her hand.
Listen, Sue, let's not ruin our friendship. I'll be there for you, no matter what you decide. You understand that the days ahead won't be pleasant.
I know, Jan, Sue sighed heavily. Look, like I said, I was drunk and I made a mistake. I hate what I did, but it happened and I need to accept it.
What Tim doesn't know won't hurt him.
After all, he and I didn't have a sex life anyway.
Janet's eyes narrowed. You're not going to tell him. You know I won't say anything, but what if he finds out sometime in the future? It could be even worse.
No, let's not fight again.
Just think about it. They fell back into awkward silence.
Janet picked up her car after dropping off and drove Sue home, and they parted with hugs and kisses. Good luck, Sue, Jan whispered as Sue walked up the front sidewalk with her suitcase. Sue shook her head and raised her chin boldly as she opened the door and walked into the house. She saw Tim sitting in his chair.
Hey, honey, did you miss me?
She smiled bravely.
We had fun, but it's good to be back home.
Tim looked at her coldly.
Sit down. I want to know everything about your trip. What was so fun about it?
Although he spoke quietly, there was a strength in his voice that Sue had not heard before. She cringed slightly, but quickly pulled herself together. I'm tired, Tim. I want to take a shower and change into something more comfortable.
I'll tell you everything later. You're not going anywhere. I told you to sit down.
Now sit down, or I'll get up and make you sit down, Tim said threateningly.
Sue turned to him. What the hell is wrong with you? I just said I'm tired. We'll talk later, and if you don't like it, we won't talk at all. She exploded.
Tim stood up in an instant and suddenly found himself in front of her nose. I've never laid a hand on you in anger, but if you don't sit down, I'll spank you, he growled. He then placed his hand on her chest and slowly pushed her towards the chair. Taking a deep breath, Tim returned to his seat. Sue just sat there and stared at him. She didn't recognize the man in front of her.
Tim never did that.
She decided to please him. Perhaps he was just angry that she left with her friends.
Okay, Susan, now tell me all about your trip and all the fun you talk about.
For God's sake, Tim, Sue began. We just relaxed. We drank a little too much, lost a little too much, just that kind of thing.
We watched a few shows and ate a good meal.
Nothing special, but it was nice to relax.
What's a break from, Susan? Tim asked quietly. Take a break from me. It seems like getting a break from me was your main goal, doesn't it?
Tim, Sue exploded.
I don't understand what you're getting at.
I'm tired and don't want to play your stupid games. And with these words, she began to get up.
Sit the hell down, Susan. We're not done yet, not by a long shot. Tim responded sharply. Tell me, Susan, how many men have you had behind my back? How many times have you cheated on me? How many times have you been unfaithful? I'd really like to know.
Sue sat there, pale, with horror in her eyes.
How much does he really know, or is it just his guess? She thought to herself.
She attacked, perhaps in a desperate attempt to deny what she had done.
You're crazy, you creature. How dare you accuse me of treason or infidelity? Are you drunk? What's wrong with you, you idiot? She hissed angrily.
Tim suddenly smiled. Not only are you a cheater, but you're also a liar, and I have to admit, a pretty good one.
I imagine you've had plenty of practice lying to me. I know, Susan. I know all about your date with Hurley in Vegas. You're so stupid. Bitch, did you really think you could sleep with him there and get away with it? How many times have you been with him before, Susan? How many other men have you taken in? Susan shook her head, stunned at being exposed and shocked by the confrontation with her husband.
She mentally scolded herself for her stupidity, her short-sightedness. Tim looked lost in thought, seemingly lost in thought.
What I really don't understand is how I could even think that I loved you. I probably once did.
But the last couple of years have convinced me that the woman I loved has disappeared, replaced by a mischief and a woman of easy virtue.
Now you can have Hurley, Susan, and anyone else you want again.
You won't have to worry about your husband finding out anymore, since you won't have him soon.
Susan sat trembling and pale as a sheet.
She had never seen Tim so angry, so cold and cruel. This was the new Tim she was now facing.
Please, Tim, she begged. Please, at least listen to me. I screwed up, I made a mistake. I know that, but you can't just throw away our years together. I swear that was the only time I was unfaithful. I didn't want this to happen, I swear, she begged, tears now flowing from her eyes. Tim was looking at her with obvious contempt on her face. It wasn't just your betrayal with Hurley that convinced me to get rid of you, although that was the deciding factor. You were unfaithful, Susan, and you knew how important loyalty was to me. You betrayed everything I believed in. Without loyalty and trust, no relationship cannot exist. Besides, the last couple of years have been torture. You showed me no respect and little care. I felt like an unwanted guest, almost like a stranger that you tolerated.
You know what the real problem is, Susan, Tim continued coldly.
You began to confuse masculinity with machismo.
Your ideas about what a man should be began to conflict with reality. I told you many times that a loud voice, boasting and muscles are not the qualities that make a man a man. I also told you that violence is almost never the answer to a problem, but you thought I was weak and timid. You forgot that a real man does not need to boast or humiliate others. A real man has a sense of responsibility, a sense of duty to his loved ones. A real man protects and provides for his own family. A real man is faithful and loyal to his family and his friends. A real man needs to be more than just a good lover and a loud mouth, but those qualities seem to have attracted you.
Susan sat stunned, in shock. She literally couldn't say a word.
Tim had never spoken to her like that. With such disgust and bitterness in their years of marriage.
Tim, she tried to argue.
Shut up, Susan, Tim interrupted her sharply.
You really don't have anything to say that I want to hear. Don't even try to lie to me again. It won't work anymore. I've already moved most of my things.
I'll sort out the rest later.
You realize there's really a little of me here. Almost everything that we have bought over the past years, there were things that you decided that we needed.
I hope they will comfort you. I also suggest that you find a lawyer.
The divorce will go quickly and smoothly if you do not fight me. I will also provide for you so that your lifestyle doesn't change much. But I suspect that your entertainment in Vegas already ensures that.
So you're safe with that. Sue tried to gather her thoughts and defend herself, but she felt too overwhelmed to form any meaningful defense. Tim, she began with difficulty.
I really don't know what to say. I'm sorry about what happened. I made a mistake.
Tim chuckled disdainfully. A mistake, Susan, is when you forget to put gas in your car and it stalls. What you did was not a mistake. It was a choice. You choose to go to Vegas and sleep with Walt Hurley.
You chose to lie to me. You chose to betray me and our promises to each other.
It was not an accident. It was a conscious decision.
Susan sat there, not knowing what to say.
The fact that he was right only made it worse. Her betrayal was truly a conscious choice, not a spontaneous offense. Tim stood up and picked up his keys. I'll stay in a hotel for a couple of days until I find something permanent. Don't worry, I'll notify you of the divorce papers through a lawyer.
I don't want to talk to you directly anymore. Everything between us is over.
He headed towards the door and stopped before leaving.
I always thought we were growing old together, Sue. I thought I could trust you more than anyone else in the world.
Now I realize how wrong I was. I hope one day you realize the magnitude of your mistake and you will find a way to forgive yourself.
However, I am not going to do this.
With these words, Tim left the house, closing the door behind him. Susan heard the car pull out of the garage, the sound of its engine gradually receding until it disappeared completely. Left alone, she felt as empty and broken as she could imagine. She sat with her face buried in her hands and cried until tears began to flow through her fingers. She knew that she had lost not only her husband, but also her best friend, and that no amount of apology or regret would bring back the past. The next few months passed very quickly for Tim. He had a business to grow and thanked his stars that Pam was working alongside him in her new role as HR director. Her tireless work and experience proved invaluable. Soon they had a core team and many potential clients showed interest. The divorce went smoothly and, despite Sue's numerous attempts to contact him, which he rejected, it was finalized in just a few months. Tim has spoken to his daughter Amanda often since he moved. She repeatedly reminded him that her mother was confused and was desperately trying to do everything she could to rekindle the relationship. Tim patiently explained to her that this was impossible until finally Mandy stopped trying. Tim promised to keep in touch with her and indeed called her every week. Tim was in his office when a courier delivered a large brown envelope to Kim, his new secretary. "Tim, you have a FedEx delivery from Doug Klein.
Shall I bring it to you?" she asked through the intercom. Tim knew what it was. His lawyer had called the day before. He felt his body tremble and told Kim to bring it. After she left, he sat and simply looked at the envelope without opening it, without touching it. It contained final documents confirming that he was now single, that his marriage was officially dissolved. He sat quietly and considered his feelings. This delivery stirred up deep emotions within him, emotions he thought he had left behind. Sadness overwhelmed him. He felt an emptiness inside, a hole he couldn't fill. He also concluded that Sue's alienation was, at least in part, due to his own inability to confront her about the changes that were taking place. He should never have allowed this change of attitude, should never have allowed their relationship to cool. Perhaps if he had been more assertive with her, this whole mess could have been avoided. But in the end, it was her decision. She was a grown woman and she knew the consequences of her actions. One way or another, Tim decided that that was in the past. Now he needs to look to the future. What Tim didn't realize was that, while he was receiving the final divorce papers, Sue was receiving them too. They were delivered by mail from her lawyer 2 days after Tim received his copy. She sat at the kitchen table and simply looked at the envelope without touching it or opening it. She knew what it contained. Her face dropped and tears appeared again. She took them away and tried to collect her thoughts. She still couldn't accept the destruction of her marriage. She knew she loved Tim and would always love him. She also admitted that it was her actions that led her to this state, but she couldn't think of anything she could do that she hadn't already tried. She needed to come up with something, anything. Tim hasn't forgotten about Walter Hurley. One day, a couple of months after the final court decision, he decided to start visiting a bar that Hurley sometimes went to. It was within walking distance of his office. He began stopping there after work and soon became a recognizable visitor. A few weeks later, one early evening, Tim heard loud and cheerful voices from a side room of the establishment. He thought he recognized Hurley's voice, loud and smug. "Hell, I've had a dozen married women in recent months. They're all women of easy virtue." When it comes down to it, he laughed. He was surrounded by his retinue, who egged him on and laughed with him. Tim walked to the entrance to the room and looked inside. Hurley noticed and recognized him immediately. He grinned with joy. Well, look who's here. How's it going, Timmy? Susie finally kicked you out, huh? Guess you couldn't match me, huh?" He laughed roughly. "What makes you think that any woman would want a bastard like you, Walt?" Tim said slowly and clearly, not taking his eyes off his prey. "You little bastard, I'll teach you to respect your elders," Walt yelled and lunged at Tim. There was a fight. A 911 call led to the arrival of ambulances and police. It was soon determined that Tim acted in self-defense and no charges will be brought against him. After the commotion died down and the police completed their interviews, Tim stood up and left the bar, heading home. He felt good, not because he had harmed Hurley, but because he had not lost control and killed him, although he could have easily done so. Maybe sometimes a little violence really is the answer to a problem, he thought to himself with a smile.
Several months passed and BFS continued to thrive. Tim took hiring very seriously, choosing only the best, people with outstanding knowledge in the field, and rewarding them generously. He also ensured that all of his clients were treated with respect, fairness, and always with their best interests in mind. He discovered that the keys to business success are not that complicated: provide excellent service, set fair prices, and do whatever it takes to maintain customer trust. His credo worked. He now found himself running a very successful business.
So why wasn't he happy? Why didn't he feel satisfied?
He did not want or could not understand the reasons for his discontent.
He refused to think about it.
Tim was at his desk when Kim told him that Mr. Luke Kaufman was calling.
"Luke, damn, it's been a long time." "Good to hear from you," Tim exclaimed.
"Hey, Tim, yeah, long time no see.
I'm just sitting here feeling a little sad. You know, there's only 4 of us left."
"It makes you think about your own mortality."
"Yeah, I know, Doug died in a car accident and Tom died of a heart attack. But you, of all people, shouldn't be bothered with that."
"Hell, you're a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist.
Does that bother you?" Tim asked quietly.
"No, Tim, it doesn't bother me, but it's certainly depressing to think about, which is quite normal."
"I should know that," Lou laughed.
"Anyway, Tim, just wanted to call and let you know that I've moved.
Now I live only half an hour away from you."
"That's great, Lou, I can't wait to see you."
"Let's meet."
"Oh boy, you don't even know, see that Lou Marcy died of ovarian cancer over a year ago, Tim."
"That's one of the reasons I decided to move. I wanted to get away from that part of the country. Too many memories."
There was a pause.
"Damn, Lou, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you call? I would have been there for you. We all would have been."
"I know, Tim, but there was a time when I really wanted to be alone. It was a difficult time for me and I needed to deal with it on my own."
"It's just a trait of my character. I understand myself."
"I've already trained enough," he laughed quietly.
"Anyway, Tim, how about lunch tomorrow? Can you leave, or is your new business taking up all your time?"
"Lunch sounds great, and yes, I'll be able to leave.
Luckily, I have great people here and I don't have to hang over them. They know what to do."
The next day, Tim and Lou sat in a cozy booth, ordering from the waiter. They talked about old times and what they had been doing in recent years. Tim learned that Marcy's illness began suddenly and her death was relatively quick. He knew how much Lou loved and depended on his wife, and he sympathized with him.
"Okay, Tim," Lou said. "You knew this question would come up. What the hell happened between you and Susan? I can't believe you got divorced."
"I don't think I've ever seen two people more in love."
Tim suddenly and without warning felt his heart jump into his throat. He gasped and was unable to speak for a moment.
Lou saw this and his face frowned with worry.
"Calm down, buddy. Just relax and take a deep breath. Don't try to say anything for a few minutes." Lou grabbed his forearm and squeezed.
"Damn," Tim finally breathed.
"Where did that come from?" "It caught me off guard. Sorry, Lou, I didn't mean to lose my temper like that." Tim took a deep breath and looked at Lou. "Lou, don't tell me you're going to do psychological bullshit or try to analyze me, please.
This was all too painful and I really don't want to dig up all this dirt.
It's been almost 2 years and I need to learn to get over it. Tim, you know better than anyone. I'm a friend, just a friend, and I would never treat you like a patient. I know you too well and we have too much in common.
What I do know is that you need to open up to someone, and I also know that you will not find a better person than the one who is now in front of you."
Tim finally nodded and admitted. "Yes, I know, you're right. Let's eat first and then go to my place. It's nearby."
They talked about minor things during lunch and then headed to Tim's apartment where they settled down in armchairs with a nice bottle of wine that they shared.
Tim didn't know where to start. He knew that Susan's betrayal was not the beginning of their problems.
They began much earlier than this climax. So he started telling Lou about how Sue had slowly changed over the years.
He again experienced the petty insults, contempt and indifference that she showed.
He ended his story with Sue's adventure in Las Vegas. Lou listened carefully to Tim's story, nodding or asking questions when appropriate. When he got to the Vegas event, he noticed Tim hesitated a little.
It was obvious that the pain was still fresh despite the passage of time. Tim, have you tried to figure out the reasons for Sue's behavior change? Also, did you sit down with her after her trip to Vegas to try to understand why she did it? Damn, Lou, you're so analytical. Her change in behavior didn't happen in a week or even a month. It was gradual and almost insidious, and it was easier for me to ignore her when she acted like that. I didn't want a confrontation with her. I was afraid of losing control and getting angry. And no, I didn't sit down with her after she slept with someone in Vegas to calmly discuss her condition. I was furious, completely furious. Lou, she betrayed me. She destroyed any trust one had in her. She was unfaithful. Tim sat, the tension visible on his face. Lou, how long would we have lasted in the field if we had not had complete trust in the other members of the team? One of the reasons for our success and our survival was loyalty, which was at the core of everything we did. Without it, we would be doomed. Shouldn't I expect the same from my own wife? Tim's voice rose at the last sentence, and Lou could see how excited he was. Okay, Tim, calm down. I understand what you're trying to say. I'm glad you spoke up. I think it might benefit you. Tim sank into a chair. He was pale and shocked. He's also surprised by how deeply he's still hurt. How long will he suffer, he asked himself. When will he finally get over this and find some peace? Susan walked wearily to the front door of the house, answering the doorbell. Oh, hi, January, come in, she said quietly. Jan walked in and shook her head in exasperation. Oh, my God, Sue, you look terrible. You need to get a grip. It's been almost 2 years since your breakup, and you act like it was yesterday. Sue's eyes flashed suddenly with anger. Then she stopped, and a smile of mild amusement appeared on her face. Jean, she laughed. You're the only person in the world who can talk to me like that. You're still a mother when taking care of her chicks. I'm fine, really, honey. In order, exclaimed January, look at you. Your hair is a mess. This robe is old and shabby. You don't have any makeup on, and it's almost noon. It doesn't look like you're okay. Look, Sue, I don't want to keep preaching to you, but you need to start living again. Sue just smiled at her friend. Jan, I work at my old company, and I find it interesting and exciting. I look like this now because it's the weekend, and I don't need to put on makeup. Why do you want me to pretend that Brad Pitt is coming to see me? Ugh, Jan replied, smiling back. I'm talking about your social life, Sue. Have you gone on a date? Have you shown any interest in men? Hell, I even wonder if you've talked to any men since Tim left. A cloud of sadness appeared on Sue's face at the mention of her ex-husband. Jan, I'm not interested. Really, Jan, I'm just not interested. I screwed up big time, and now I'm paying a heavy price. They sat at the kitchen table while Sue made coffee. She continued to try to explain to Janet how she felt. Jan, I've told you this before, but you don't seem to understand what I mean. It wasn't just my stupid fall from wall fam, it was months and months before that. I became harmful, the worst wife. Now I understand it. I understand it when it's too late. Tim didn't deserve to be treated like this. I treated him terribly because I forgot why I fell in love with him in the first place. Only when it was too late did I wake up. I lost him, Jan, and I know this is the end. I should have understood. I really should have. Loyalty means everything to Tim, and I ruined that. I was unfaithful to him, and our marriage bows. He will never forgive this, and I'm simply not whole without time. Therefore, I now have absolutely no desire to start dating and start new relationships. Maybe one day I'll change my mind, but for now I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Sue then turned sharply to Janet and threatened. So that's enough, friend. Enough nagging, okay?
Besides, you've been a widow for 4 years and you're still single and not seeing anyone, she said, but with a smile.
Jan signed and agreed. Okay, I won't nag anymore, but you're coming with me to dinner tonight. I'm alone right now, and so are you. At least we can go out and have a good meal.
Sue and Jan settled into a booth in South St. Grill, their favorite restaurant, was finishing their dinner when Sue suddenly stood up and moved to the corner of the booth.
What's happened? Jan asked worriedly. Damn, Sue muttered.
Oh boy, you don't even know, seated Lou. Marcy died of ovarian cancer over a year ago, Tim.
That's one of the reasons I decided to move. I wanted to get away from that part of the country. Too many memories. There was a pause. Damn, Lou, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you call? I would have been there for you. We all would have been.
I know, Tim, but there was a time when I really wanted to be alone. It was a difficult time for me and I needed to deal with it on my own.
It's just a trait of my character. I understand myself.
I've already trained enough, he laughed quietly.
Anyway, Tim, how about lunch tomorrow? Can you leave, or is your new business taking up all your time? Lunch sounds great, and yes, I'll be able to leave. Luckily, I have great people here and I don't have to hang over them. They know what to do.
The next day, Tim and Lou sat in a cozy booth, ordering from the waiter. They talked about old times and what they had been doing in recent years. Tim learned that Marcy's illness began suddenly and her death was relatively quick. He knew how much Lou loved and depended on his wife, and he sympathized with him.
Okay, Tim, Lou said. You knew this question would come up. What the hell happened between you and Susan? I can't believe you got divorced.
I don't think I've ever seen two people more in love.
Tim suddenly and without warning felt his heart jump into his throat. He gasped and was unable to speak for a moment.
Lou saw this and his face frowned with worry.
Calm down, buddy. Just relax and take a deep breath. Don't try to say anything for a few minutes. Lou grabbed his forearm and squeezed.
Damn, Tim finally breathed.
Where did that come from? It caught me off guard. Sorry, Lou, I didn't mean to lose my temper like that. Tim took a deep breath and looked at Lou. Lou, don't tell me you're going to do psychological bullshit or try to analyze me, please.
This was all too painful and I really don't want to dig up all this dirt.
It's been almost 2 years and I need to learn to get over it. Tim, you know better than anyone. I'm a friend, just a friend, and I would never treat you like a patient. I know you too well and we have too much in common.
What I do know is that you need to open up to someone, and I also know that you will not find a better person than the one who is now in front of you.
Tim finally nodded and admitted. Yes, I know, you're right. Let's eat first and then go to my place. It's nearby.
They talked about minor things during lunch and then headed to Tim's apartment where they settled down in armchairs with a nice bottle of wine that they shared.
Tim didn't know where to start. He knew that Susan's betrayal was not the beginning of their problems.
They began much earlier than this climax. So he started telling Lou about how Sue had slowly changed over the years.
He again experienced the petty insults, contempt and indifference that she showed.
He ended his story with Sue's adventure in Las Vegas. Lou listened carefully to Tim's story, nodding or asking questions when appropriate. When he got to the Vegas event, he noticed Tim hesitated a little.
It was obvious that the pain was still fresh despite the passage of time. Tim, have you tried to figure out the reasons for Sue's behavior change? Also, did you sit down with her after her trip to Vegas to try to understand why she did it? Damn, Lou, you're so analytical. Her change in behavior didn't happen in a week or even a month. It was gradual and almost insidious, and it was easier for me to ignore her when she acted like that. I didn't want a confrontation with her. I was afraid of losing control and getting angry.
And no, I didn't sit down with her after she slept with someone in Vegas to calmly discuss her condition.
I was furious, completely furious. Lou, she betrayed me.
She destroyed any trust one had in her.
She was unfaithful.
Tim sat, the tension visible on his face.
Lou, how long would we have lasted in the field if we had not had complete trust in the other members of the team?
One of the reasons for our success and our survival was loyalty, which was at the core of everything we did.
Without it, we would be doomed. Shouldn't I expect the same from my own wife?
Tim's voice rose at the last sentence, and Lou could see how excited he was. Okay, Tim, calm down.
I understand what you're trying to say. I'm glad you spoke up. I think it might benefit you. Tim sank into a chair. He was pale and shocked. He's also surprised by how deeply he's still hurt.
How long will he suffer, he asked himself.
When will he finally get over this and find some peace? Susan walked wearily to the front door of the house, answering the doorbell.
Oh, hi, January, come in, she said quietly.
Jan walked in and shook her head in exasperation.
Oh, my God, Sue, you look terrible.
You need to get a grip.
It's been almost 2 years since your breakup, and you act like it was yesterday.
Sue's eyes flashed suddenly with anger. Then she stopped, and a smile of mild amusement appeared on her face. Jean, she laughed. You're the only person in the world who can talk to me like that.
You're still a mother when taking care of her chicks.
I'm fine, really, honey. In order, exclaimed January, look at you. Your hair is a mess. This robe is old and shabby. You don't have any makeup on, and it's almost noon. It doesn't look like you're okay. Look, Sue, I don't want to keep preaching to you, but you need to start living again. Sue just smiled at her friend. Jan, I live.
I work at my old company, and I find it interesting and exciting. I look like this now because it's the weekend, and I don't need to put on makeup.
Why do you want me to pretend that Brad Pitt is coming to see me? Ugh, Jan replied, smiling back. I'm talking about your social life, Sue. Have you gone on a date? Have you shown any interest in men? Hell, I even wonder if you've talked to any men since Tim left. A cloud of sadness appeared on Sue's face at the mention of her ex-husband. Jan, I'm not interested. Really, Jan, I'm just not interested.
I screwed up big time, and now I'm paying a heavy price. They sat at the kitchen table while Sue made coffee. She continued to try to explain to Janet how she felt.
Jan, I've told you this before, but you don't seem to understand what I mean.
It wasn't just my stupid fall from wall fam, it was months and months before that. I became harmful, the worst wife.
Now I understand it. I understand it when it's too late.
Tim didn't deserve to be treated like this. I treated him terribly because I forgot why I fell in love with him in the first place.
Only when it was too late did I wake up. I lost him, Jan, and I know this is the end. I should have understood. I really should have. Loyalty means everything to Tim, and I ruined that. I was unfaithful to him, and our marriage bows. He will never forgive this, and I'm simply not whole without time. Therefore, I now have absolutely no desire to start dating and start new relationships. Maybe one day I'll change my mind, but for now I'll keep doing what I'm doing.
Sue then turned sharply to Janet and threatened.
So that's enough, friend. Enough nagging, okay?
Besides, you've been a widow for 4 years and you're still single and not seeing anyone, she said, but with a smile.
Jan signed and agreed. Okay, I won't nag anymore, but you're coming with me to dinner tonight. I'm alone right now, and so are you. At least we can go out and have a good meal.
Sue and Jan settled into a booth in South St. Grill, their favorite restaurant, was finishing their dinner when Sue suddenly stood up and moved to the corner of the booth.
What's happened? Jan asked worriedly. Damn, Sue muttered.
Even with her slippers on, she was only a head shorter than his 6'4" height. She had short blonde hair, thick and soft. He knew she was well over 40, but her body was obviously firm and slender. He sighed, embarrassed by these feelings. This was the first time since he had been alone that he felt so attracted to a woman. I wonder if Janice, standing at the kitchen counter, was also lost in thought and experiencing similar emotions.
The next day came a clear and bright morning.
Lou was impatient to go to January. He called and agreed with Jan that it would be nice for Sue to be there as well. He had something important to explain to Sue about why her infidelity was so destructive to Tim, much more so than to the average husband. Why it would be so much harder for him to forgive her, why reconciliation might be impossible.
Jan opened the door and greeted Lou with a smile.
She wore a short sundress that showed off quite a bit of leg and cleavage.
Lou had to force himself to focus on the reason for his visit. He realized that a relationship with Janet was something he would explore. Sue ran up to him and hugged him. "Oh, Lou, it's so good to see you. Do you really think you can help bring us closer together again?" "I'll do whatever I can to help." "You know that," she begged.
Jan prepared a full pot of coffee and they moved into the kitchen, sitting down at the small breakfast table with mugs of the steaming drink.
Lou frowned a little and began.
"Sue, I really don't know if I can do much, so I shouldn't get my hopes up." He saw Sue's face fall and hurried to continue. "Please let me explain why I seem so pessimistic, but you both have to promise me that what I tell you today will never leave this room. What I'm about to say must remain strictly confidential."
"Promise?"
He looked at both women. They both reassured him and he began to tell them about Tim's years in the U.S. Navy and exactly what his job was like during those years.
Both women sat spellbound, surprised that such a gentle-looking man could have such a past.
Lou patiently explained to them the reasons why Tim valued loyalty so much and why he felt Sue's betrayal so strongly.
Sue sat listening with a feeling of horror and remorse. How could she be so stupid, so blind, and yes, so selfish?
Now she realized that she had confused restraint with cowardice, tolerance with weakness, aversion to violence with cowardice. She sat and slowly came to the realization that the chances of forgiveness from Tim were very small.
Lou finished speaking.
They all sat in silence, the women digesting the information they had just received and Lou contemplating his next words.
"Sue, I'm not sure how much I can help, but I'll try to see what I can do."
"I won't make any promises, though," he cautioned.
Sue sat still and nodded.
Her eyes sparkled with undried tears as she looked toward a future without Tim.
Lou, however, was not as pessimistic as he seemed. He knew Tim and he had a plan. Luckily, his plan didn't require any action, just a lot of quick talking. Tim opened the front door and was surprised to see Lou Kaufman standing there. "Hello, Tim, can I come in?" Tim blinked. "Of course, Lou, I'm just surprised to see you. Is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine. I just talked to Sue at Janet's house."
He saw Tim's eyes harden and quickly walked over to him.
"Now listen to me, Tim. You will listen to me even if I have to try and pin you to the floor. I know you could probably kill me, but what it comes down to is if you don't sit down and listen to what I have to say." Lou watched the signs of indecision on his friend's face until he finally sighed and made a grimace. "You've always been annoying. Okay, I'll listen to you, but you know it won't change anything." And with that, he settled down on the couch. Lou remained standing and began to speak.
"Tim, I listened to you talk about the destruction of your marriage."
"I listened to Janet. By the way, you have a good friend in this lady."
"I also listened to Sue pour out her heart, and I came to some conclusions that you need to hear." "No, I'm not going to give you a bunch of psychobabble, although my experience has helped me make some sense out of the problems in your connection. Remember that day when we all sat waiting for our discharge orders? We all joined the Navy at the same time, and at the same time, they were demobilized together. You sat there, serious as a heart attack, and told us that from this day on you were going to become a completely different person. You said that you would stop being a cruel killer and become the kindest, calmest, most compassionate person that you were. Only you can be. You were going to become the best person you could be. Do you remember that?" Tim nodded. He remembered this event well and knew that every word was serious. He also thought that he had achieved this goal. Lou continued. "We made fun of you back then, Tim, but you never understood that we never considered you a cruel killer. You had a job, like the rest of us. We didn't consider ourselves cruel. We just had missions that needed to be done. We didn't realize how serious you were about this. This may be news to you, mate, but we always thought you were an extremely nice guy. We all really appreciated you, Tim.
Now, as far as I can tell, you were dead serious about it and therefore went to the extreme from the brutal killer you thought you would become to the kindest, most compassionate, gentle, unarmed person you could be.
But you're not realized that as the years passed, you retreated more and more into your shell, becoming a man without a backbone, a man without convictions. You went from Dr. Jekyll, who you never were, to Mr. Hyde, who never existed. Tim listened attentively and Lou noted this with some satisfaction. He knew how smart Tim was and he relied on that intelligence to build his arguments.
Tim, Lou said softly, this is the man Sue lived with. Her love for you blinded her to what you were doing to yourself. She didn't see your intentions. She just saw how kind and compassionate you were.
She saw you through the lens of her love for you, but apparently your continued descent into personal invisibility, the immersion of your core personality, eventually, albeit unconsciously, began to affect her. She could not understand where the man she had fallen in love with and married had gone to. Tim looked up at him, tears sparkling in his eyes.
But Lou, she cheated, she cheated, she cheated. He kept repeating. She betrayed me, she was unfaithful. Lou looked at him with sympathy. Okay, let's break this down. Your relationship has finally reached the breaking point, if not for you, then for your wife. She was completely perplexed, unable to cope with what she considered a dead-end marriage. So she went to Vegas with a group of friends. I know, you told me how she got ready. Have you ever thought that maybe she just wanted to feel feminine, sexy, desired? Perhaps even the very thought of sex with someone was alien to her. Then she got drunk and fell into the clutches of a womanizer, a scoundrel who treated her to drinks, showered her with compliments, which I'm sure you haven't done in a long time, acted like a real macho man and took advantage of her. Look, Tim, I'm not condoning the fact that she did, but it wasn't a relationship. It wasn't a long-term affair. It was just one night, and she felt disgusted after that. I know this because Sue confessed it to Janet in tears immediately after the fact. It doesn't seem like something a person would do, plan treason. Besides, you're confusing the loyalty we had for each other as a team with what loyalty is between a man and a woman. We were faithful because we had to. Our lives depended on each other. Lovers are faithful because they want it. But when the foundation of the relationship starts to break down, everything starts to break down, even loyalty, and it is both of you to blame. That's enough, Tim shouted. Damn it, Lou, that's enough. His voice dropped to a whisper. I can't listen anymore, Lou. Please leave me alone, please. He was sobbing now. Lou suddenly found himself with tears in his eyes, and his heart sank with sympathy for his old friend. He quickly walked over to the bar and poured some strong vodka, which he handed to Tim with trembling hands. Tim, Lou said softly, I took absolutely no pleasure in what I said to you, but I truly believe it needed to be said. I love you like a brother and did it out of love and respect for you. Have a little vodka and just think about what I told you. That's all I ask. Lou turned slowly, worried about Tim's state of mind, and walked out the door. 30 days have passed since the confrontation between the two friends. The season had changed, and Tim was sitting at his desk, looking at the new buds on the maple tree just outside the window. He turned back to the desk with a sigh and picked up the phone. They answered him on the first call. Hello? Sue, this is Tim. Can we talk? Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.